What the f?
Okay, so I am at the auction picking up a vehicle I bought technically on Saturday, and the technically is regarding buying it. Now, I know quite a few people have come to this auction because I've been coming here for years. Took a hiatus when I moved down to Florida permanently, but now that I'm back up here, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new friends. One of these guys who's been coming here for years, you know, him and I always chat as the auction's going on, and he recently bought a 50,000 mile Monte Carlo here and restored it. It had been in an accident. So this Grand Prix GTP comes rolling through the auction. I've been trying to sell it for weeks. It's got a big suspension problem. And I said to him, geez, you know, why don't you buy that GTP just for the wheels and tires? They're like brand new on it. And he liked the idea. So he bought it for the lowest bid you can get above the junkyard, which is $225. After fees, you're looking at about $375. And then he had to pay for the title, so about $400. It might be a little bit less. Anyway, somewhere in the 300 range is what he owned that car for. Well, he came up to me later in the auction and said, you know, I just want the wheels and tires, and it's going to be a pain in the neck for me to get that Grand Prix. He lives very far away from here. He doesn't have any type of trailer, plus it needs some serious suspension work. He goes, I'll sell you the rest of the car for $100. Now, mind you, this thing has the Supercharged 3.8 liter. You can see it over there. Only has 150,000 miles on it. Interior is almost perfect. The body's in good shape for the most part. It's got a beautiful, I think it's a Borla exhaust system on it. So the car's got some nice parts. The engine runs good. I said for $100, I could scrap it for more than that. You know, obviously he didn't want to deal with getting it out of here. Now, I wasn't going to dolly this thing home because of the way the rear suspension is, and you'll see that in a minute. So I rented a U-Haul trailer. You can see back here. It only cost me $54 for the day. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. Unfortunately, it is going to be losing those beautiful wheels and tires. Part of the deal was I'm going to take those off, bring them here for Saturday's auction, and he's going to give me a set of rollers that he has to put back on the car just so I can move it around when I need to, and I have it up on blocks. But for $100, a supercharged 3.8 liter at 150K, I could swap that engine to a lot of things. I could sell the whole car as it sits, as a parts car. I could even look at what it needs to be fixed underneath. It's got some rocker rust that hides behind the doors. And obviously we have a pretty severe problem with the rear suspension, at least it appears to be. So, you know, if it only cost me $400 or $500 to fix this car, it's solid. And of course, some new wheels and tires, not a bad buy. Or I part it out, or I take the engine out and scrap the chassis. I haven't quite decided yet. Now, those of you who are observant probably said that does not look exactly like your Escalade's dash. This is the other Escalade. You've seen me put some hints out that I bought another one. This is my 05 Escalade. It's a short wheelbase as opposed to my ESV. And I actually wanted to use my ESV. That's what I always tow things with, but U-Haul would not let me tow with it. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, oh, you could have just swapped the trailer and never would have known after you picked it up. Well, it's already hooked up to this thing, and this truck is the same engine, same transmission, so it shouldn't be an issue. They, for some reason, said you can tow with this one, you can't tow with the ESV. I'm guessing it has something to do with the wheelbase. Nothing else will make sense. But anyway, let's hop out. I've got the key to the Pontiac here, and he's giving me the title and everything for this car. So for $100, you really can't go wrong. So here is the new Escalade, although it's not quite new to me, and I'll explain that in a later video. I actually owned this truck years ago, right around the time I bought the ESV, and I sold it to my buddy Lawrence, who then just sold it back to me. Now, the one thing I'm a little concerned about, and I didn't notice this till a few minutes ago when I got out of the truck for the first time after picking up the trailer, you can see that the front is sitting pretty high, or rather the rear end sitting pretty low because of the weight of the trailer. When we put the Grand Prix on here, I'll be curious to see just how much the rear end sags. So I'm going to go over there now and we'll fire her up. Okay, so you can see the rear end is obviously sitting a lot lower than the front end. A little bit of surface rust poking through here, but it hasn't rotted through yet. Definitely repairable should I decide to go that route. And the driver's side is in overall good condition. You can tell, actually no, that doesn't look too bad. A little bit of bubbling right there. There's those nice wheels and tires I'm going to be losing, unfortunately. It would have been a real steal with those on there. Let's see if this piece of junk's even going to start. I need a boost. Oh, son of a gun. I was really hoping this wouldn't need a jump start. We have a loaded up DTP. A lot of these would have the cloth. You can see we have leather with the suede, sunroof, heads up display, got the information center here, which is pretty neat. The car didn't have any check engine lights on when it was running. It seemed to run smooth. The interior is in great shape. Even the driver's seat, if you look at it, has no wear. So this car has a lot of part value should I decide to go that route. Which, you know, all depends on when I look underneath this thing, what's going on. You can see there is some rocker rust as to be expected with a New England vehicle. However, it is covered by the rocker panel covers here. So I don't think that'd be an issue for any sort of inspection on this vehicle. But so it looks like we have brakes, but we don't. And again, I remember seeing the brake light was on. So hopefully there's enough brakes to, or e-brake or something to stop this thing going onto the trailer. Otherwise this will be interesting. Oil change is still somewhat current. Got the nice white gauge cluster too. But there she is. That's all the money right there. Supercharged 3.8. These engines aren't that expensive. They're out there. They're in wrecking yards, but certainly $100 and you have the harness and everything else you need. That's pretty good. Here's one thing we should check on now. We got brake fluid, so there probably is a leak somewhere, but there is still brake fluid. It's not like it's lost all of its brake fluid, so we should have some sort of brakes still. And let's take a look underneath here. I've yet to look underneath this car. Again, I had no intention of buying it, but for $100. Oh, trailing arm, whatever that is, just popped off. I wonder if that's the only problem. And they're actually very clean. Are you serious? Huh. I wonder if that's the only problem with it. Although it does sit very low, but look at this nice Borla exhaust system. It can't be that old because it's still very clean. Well, it might be like stainless or something, but that's funny. That's the only issue this thing has. That's really not a big deal. Okay, so we just had the guys here give it a jump. You get the typical valve cover leak on the 3800 back there. Clearly hasn't had the recall done yet where they pull this cover off. So I'm glad because I like the cover. It's running smooth and quiet. Oh, you can hear that supercharger whine. Awesome, glad to hear that still works. A lot of people neglect to change the oil. I don't have it marked as low brakes, and they always do that here, but the brakes are certainly low. As long as they kind of work, that's my goal. But it seems like this vehicle is probably donated up for that trailing arm in the back popping off. It's probably because of the brake lines. So we're reversed. It does stop. That's the good news. It's gonna make getting on the trailer a lot easier. You know, had I known it was such a simple thing, I kind of almost wish I came and checked it out beforehand. We just popped it back on and took my dolly. But I suppose this will be a good test for the new Escalade and using a full-size trailer as opposed to using the dolly, because it's obviously something I'd like to get in the future when the right deal comes along. Certainly would be better for cars like this. Oh, the heads-up display works. This thing is cool. You know, if it just needs brake lines and a little rear suspension work, minor stuff, the engine sounds healthy. I think I'll probably fix it. This is a really cool car, especially for $100. Leaves me a lot of room to make it perfect and still be into it for pretty cheap. All right, I'm hoping it's just the angle of the parking lot here. I don't think that it is. It's really not a laughing matter. The new Escalade isn't taking this too well. The rear ride control either doesn't work or This is just too much weight for it, because I know the rear air shocks back there have been replaced. So maybe the compressor doesn't work, maybe this is just the way it is. You can see quite a difference between the front and the rear there, and that is sitting quite low, that tongue. So what do? Well, yeah, so here we go. This is definitely one of the sketchier things I've done. This thing is just nose down toward the Escalade. I don't like it at all. And of course there's a cop right over here. Isn't that too loud? I don't know. I just need to get this thing out of the back here at the very least before they close the gate, and we'll go from there. Okay, so that was definitely not happening. I'm not going 20 miles like that, so I took it off the trailer. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get the Navigator, I guess. It's having issues with the EGR. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hook this thing up to the ESV when I get home, and I'm just gonna put one of my cars on there as a test and just see how that one sits. I think the rear leveling is still working on that one, and if it sits nice and level as it should with a comparable weight vehicle in the back, then I'll take the ESV up. If not, I've got the Navigator, which my only concern with that one is it has a lack of power under full throttle. But if I go home a route that is level and not the back roads I typically take, that shouldn't be an issue. It's only when you gotta map the thing. There's something going on with the EGR system. I've already replaced a bunch of parts and I'm getting nowhere. But you know, around town it's just fine. So that's my other option. The GMC Sierra does not have a hookup for trailer lights, so I can't use that. Plus I never even put that thing on the road. I never put a plate on it. I've just used it as a yard truck. It's never left my property. So and I can't go down to town hall and register it today. There's no time. They're already closed. So I'm down to the ESV or the Navigator. So I will keep you guys posted. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we clearly had an issue with the rear leveling suspension, or I guess suspension in general. I'm pretty sure these trucks do have rear leveling. It's called the ride control. And if you look, the funny thing is, and why I almost trusted this one more at first, well, this one's got a tear in it now, I guess, but they look to be newer units here. There's no service ride control light on, so I figured these would work fine. They clearly did not. Here's the compressor for that system. You look at my ESV, and I put a much heavier, I wanted to know for sure before I drove back up to the auction, so I put the heaviest passenger car that I have. The Roadmaster's probably heavier, but this is pretty heavy. This is like 4,500 pounds. The 2007 Town Car, and I put it up here, and you can see it's not nearly as low. And mind you, I'm also on an incline here, but you can tell the rear end is just barely sagging on the ESV, whereas this one was about to, tip backwards. So clearly the ESV is up for the job. And remember, the Grand Prix weighs 1,000 pounds less than the Town Car here, so it should be even higher. But I just wanted to make sure before I drove all the way back up there again with the ESV that it would be up for the job. It clearly is. Even this right here is doable, a little lower than I'd like it to be, but remember, this is a much heavier vehicle than the Grand Prix. You're talking the difference between like a Geo Metro and a Ford Taurus between these two, the Grand Prix and the Lincoln Town Car. This is a heavy car. So I figured it was a good one to test, and looks like it's going to be fine. So I'm going to get this one down, go back up with the ESV, load up the Grand Prix, and we should have far less issues with that than we did with the short wheelbase here. All right. So throw a battery in this thing. What a nightmare it is getting a battery into there. Never get tired of a supercharger whine. Okay, now that it's running, I'm going to bolt that little crossbar back down and get this thing in the trailer. All right, so this is certainly better looking than it was with the short wheelbase. That's all, folks. All right, so this is much better looking of a setup than when I brought my short wheelbase. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the road. I feel comfortable, and I'll let you guys know when I get there. All right, so I'm home. The Escalade, this Escalade, not this one, took it like an absolute champ. No problems pulling it. Quick look at the car one more time before I take it down. It's going to be dark by the time I get back. So remember, the wheels and tires are not going to stay with the car, unfortunately. I don't think I'm going to have a huge issue finding some replacements. Hopefully the same wheels with some decent tires on them. The body itself is not in too bad a shape. Again, there is some rocker rust. I don't know how bad it actually is. It's covered up by these rocker covers. At least they are covered, but you know, if I'm going to make this car right, I'm probably going to want to put some patch panels on and cover them back up. But you can see there's definitely some rust down there. Yeah, so the rockers are pretty much gone. I think this will still be salvageable, this car. I think I can save it, but obviously now that I have it here at home, I can put it up on jack stands, get a better look at underneath, get a better look at the rocker panels, pull those covers off, see how bad it actually is. If it's really bad and we're starting to get structural problems with the unibody, then obviously it's a parts car, and it's a mighty fine parts car for $100. Hopefully it's not that bad, because this vehicle runs real well. The body is very presentable on it, with the exception of what's hidden. So it would be nice if I can fix this thing up and drive it. It would be a fun car. This right here, definitely still fixable. It hasn't rotted through quite yet. And we got some chips here and there that need to be addressed. It needs rear struts. I could feel it just driving it across the parking lot. All that could have been, you know, the fact that the trailing arm back here, you know, obviously that being disconnected, there's going to be some clunking, but you can see the rear end sitting a little too low. I think the struts are blown. I can kind of feel it. And it looked like when I looked in the engine bay that one of these struts, the driver's front, has already been replaced because you have the sticker over the top of the strut and the bolts are new. This one is not. So it looks like we're going to need 3 struts. Otherwise, the body's in pretty nice shape. It's dirty, obviously. It needs to be power washed, but doesn't look like there's any paint problems aside from the hood, which that's no big deal. I could put a different hood on the car. Maybe even find one that's got those nice little ram air ducts on it. The roof looks like it's okay. Yeah, I don't see any clear coat issues up here, and the interior in this car is in beautiful shape. Needs to be cleaned, but there's no tears or major wear anywhere. Remarkably, it's in very nice shape, this interior, so I'm happy to see that. So hopefully I can salvage this thing. Hopefully I can keep it on the road. It'd be a fun toy. You know, this thing seems like it's going to be all right. So my number one project I'm going to tackle on this, it's not going to be in this video, we're just wrapping this up right now, but I'm going to reconnect that trailing arm in the back just so I can safely drive this thing around the neighborhood before I take the wheels and tires off it, because I have to bring those to the guy I bought the car from on Saturday at the auction. So I'm going to reconnect that trailing arm just so I can drive it around the neighborhood, see how it drives, make sure it shifts okay, everything like that. And if I've established between that and that the rocker panels and the unibody are not in too bad a condition, then I'll go ahead, get some different wheels and tires for it, and get on to fixing what else needs to be fixed, which really just seems to be the rear struts and the brakes, whatever the issue is. Pedals low, maybe the master's bad, the brake fluid is a little bit low, some of the lines look crusty, not all of them, not all spots, but in particular back here looked a little bit crusty. So maybe there's a pinhole leak in the brake lines or something, but we do still have brakes, which is good. So I can at least take this thing out, test it out, make sure it shifts okay. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Looks like the car is going to be salvageable. And the good news is it was on the road pretty recently. It took a sticker April of last year, and I know it had a few thousand miles put on it after that because I ran the Carfax. So this car was obviously not in too bad a shape that it was still being driven up until recently. Who knows why it was donated? Maybe it's because the brake pedal went low, or maybe it's because of that trailing arm popping off. It looks like they've been replaced, those trailing arms back there. So I'd be surprised if someone donated it just over that. So maybe we have a bad transmission. I don't think so. The fluid looked pretty good. You know, it wasn't like too pink. We were saying, oh geez, you know, someone changed it, didn't fix it. And it wasn't dark either. It was just right. So I think the transmission should be okay. Either way, there's no way I'm going to get hurt in this car when I'm into it for. I could call a junkyard right now and double my money. Even after the trailer expense of $50 today. Thanks for watching, and I almost just fell on my wall. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for the next one.